Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 177 of your favourite Formula 1 show. Yes, Knowing Wheel returns to discuss the Monaco Grand Prix. We're back! We are recording this on Tuesday morning, so hence why we both probably look very, very tired after a long bank holiday weekend. Jamie, did you get up to anything exciting, good sir?
I went out yesterday, just to the Peak District. It was lovely. Yeah, that's as exciting as it got for me. I'm sure you were out in the clubs of Cheltenham or something, weren't you?
No, good heavens. I haven't been into a club in Cheltenham in 4 years?
Oh.
I don't
to know.
go out, Jamie. I don't go out at all. It's fantastic.
Well, we can refer to last summer's podcast and disprove that.
Hence why I don't go out. That was certainly not in Cheltenham either. But yeah, obviously we're back today. I'm going to segue away from that as quickly as I can to discuss all that went on during the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. Of course, obviously we spoke heading into the weekend about various bits and pieces. But of course, you know, once the cars get on the track, all focus really, isn't it, is on the on-track action. I was thinking about this as well, obviously, because I watched a fair amount of everything that was going on throughout the weekend. Monaco, I feel, is one of the only tracks where I genuinely enjoy sitting down and watching free practice. There's just something about it that feels always special.
It's just, I think, the intensity where you kind of, like, it could just jump cut to somebody in the wall at any moment. And it's kind of that intensity of the edge of your seat thing of like, wow, they're really on edge the whole time. You know, one little lock up or a mistake and they're just gone. They're out of the session. So I think that's always just a bit more excitement. And I think we've both in the past said we absolutely love Monaco as an event. I don't want it to get dropped, but I'm sure we'll get onto it. But the race this time round was didn't cover itself in glory. That's for sure.
No, exactly. And I mean, I think the other thing as well that is always quite fascinating about it, isn't it, is of course, obviously, they head out in FP1, and you can't really run programs or go through the processes of setting up the car like they do everywhere else, isn't it? You know, it was the fact that obviously they go out in Q1, and pretty much immediately they all have to use soft compound tyres first of all, because there is zero grip on the circuit. And you know, it is those little things, as we said. Obviously, we'll talk later on in the show, obviously about Monaco and its future, like we do every year. But it is those little things as well that it's kind of like it's just it's a unique challenge, and maybe Formula One needs to steer more into that. That being said, though, free practice, of course, Jamie mentioned there. You know, often it's, you know, you can just cut to someone in a wall pretty quickly. You know, you always get the occasional like taps. You know, the beautiful camera shot going through the swimming pool chicanes. Where obviously, you know, they're right up on the wall, occasionally nudging it. But really, the only major incident we saw was actually Valtteri Bottas, wasn't it? Early on in FP3, absolutely stacked his Kick Sauber car. Not that it mattered much, because they were useless all weekend.
It probably went just as fast with a broken front right axle. So, yeah, that car was awful. Like, cut adrift awful at the back in qualifying. And, yeah, I don't think... the hope is really there. And I worry, not only as a Joe fan, but also as a Hulkenberg fan, what he's got himself in for next season. Because the way that team's going is only backwards at the minute. And that's a bit worrying. They need that Audi backing as soon as they can.
I mean, you kind of think about it, of course. Obviously, we've seen AlphaTauri, Haas, and obviously now Alpine scoring points so far this year. Of course, one of the big stories
and Williams
coming into them. Yeah, and obviously Williams this weekend. Jamie, spoilers.
You just spoiled Alpine scoring points.
Oh, they scored points in Imola, didn't they? Or somewhere else before now. They'd scored a point in Miami, I think.
I ignore points that Ocon gets.
Exactly. But obviously, one of the other big talking points this weekend was obviously James Vowles obviously saying that Williams are... Well, obviously, they came out last week, didn't they, saying they reckon they're 15 kilos overweight, which they reckon is close to half a second a lap. But of course, he actually added to that this weekend, because it's believed now, obviously, with Alpine now making upgrades on their car, it's basically only Williams that is overweight. And the idea that Kick Sauber are still normally getting beaten by a Williams car that is half a second off the pace they know they can have basically for free is slightly alarming, isn't it?
Yeah, and it genuinely wouldn't surprise me now if they don't get points at all this season, which finishing P11 in the first race
might be as good as it gets.
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that probably was as well an element of. Do you remember? Obviously, 2022, wasn't it? And obviously, Alfa Romeo, which obviously was Kick Sauber before Kick Sauber, had a fantastic run at the start of the year, but that was simply because they were the only teams that got down to the weight requirement. You wonder whether obviously
this year as well.
Well, they probably had, exactly, and I wonder why that strong result there was obviously because most of the teams still were a few kilos away from that minimum. But it kind of feels at the moment, isn't it, that Kick Sauber are pretty much exactly where Haas told us Haas would be at the start of the year. A bit away from the rest of the field, and especially I think when Williams do get that weight down, which they reckon they should by the summer break. I think they're just in big trouble, aren't they? They're basically requiring a race of chaos. Yeah,
I agree, and it's not a fun time to have to be invested in that team.
No, certainly not ideal. Let's move on then into qualifying then, Jamie. Obviously, we all kind of say it, don't we, that this is the magic of Monaco. You don't really, Sunday, not so fantastic. Saturday afternoon is where the action happens, and the last couple of years have given us decent qualifying sessions here. I don't know about you, but this one didn't feel as hyped.
Not really. I think certainly when we got to Q3, it felt like all of the times were set on the first run, which always gives a bit less hype just because they've got a little bit in the tank, haven't they? Usually they're not pushing to the absolute limit. And yeah, the second runs, when you kind of see the yellow sectors pop up, it's like, oh well, this is it then. And I don't know, it just didn't feel quite as unpredictable or as uncertain as usual, because all throughout practice Leclerc kind of had everyone at an arm's length, and then all through qualifying pretty much the same. But Q1 was always interesting because you've got 20 cars navigating 3.5 miles of F1 circuit.
3.5 miles? 2 miles?
Oh, 3.5 kilometers, isn't it? I was like, trying to remember the distance. I think it's just under 4K, which is the minimum it's got to be. But because it's Monaco,
it's way below the minimum.
Is it?
Yeah, Monaco and Spa both are technically by FIA Grade 1
I know
rules,
Spa was,
both
yeah,
illegal.
But Spa is by about 40 metres.
4?
So they let them off. Is it 4? 4 metres,
It's 4 metres, yeah. It's the only reason FIA Grade 1 circuits have to be a maximum of 7 kilometres, so Spa remains the longest track.
Yes. Well, I don't know if that's the reason. It's just otherwise you end up with the Nordschleife, with the new circuits. But yeah, Q1 was fairly interesting, mostly because of a certain Mexican Checo Perez, who kind of had it all in his hands. It was a bit weird. It was almost like Imola Q2, where we cut to him, he's on the end of a lap, and then the lap time just doesn't come. There's no obvious reason for him to be out of Q1 in a Red Bull, but he just was. And yeah, he wasn't particularly blocked, or he just didn't get it together, and it was very tight. It was a matter of hundredths, but still, when you're in a Red Bull and the likes of Albon, the Haas's, the Ricciardo, they're all getting through to Q2 and you're chilling at 18th, something's up there. And is this the start of a trend of Perez getting to Europe and just absolutely losing it again?
Yeah, I mean, when you sort of look at it on paper, at the end of the day, his Q1 run, he lost just under a tenth and a half in every sector to Max Verstappen, which in the grand scheme of things, not much at all. But again, it's one of those things, I know we said it kind of towards the end of last year, didn't we? That, I mean, it was happening to a much worse degree, but those 3-4 tenths now, especially in qualifying trim for that Red Bull on more weekends, is going to be the difference between starting up towards the front alongside Max Verstappen or ending up behind both Ferraris, behind both McLarens, usually in a battle with, say, the Mercs and the Aston Martins, Or
throw
of course,
in the rest of the grid at Monaco, really.
Exactly. Or worst case scenario, at a track like Monaco where the car's not very suited anyway, to basically just being behind the just being ahead of the Formula 2 cars, otherwise known as the Kick Saubers.
Indeed, yeah, not the best from Perez, and he'll be desperate to get into Q3 at Canada, because 3 in a row suddenly becomes a bit of a trend, doesn't it? If it's the same as last year, as well.
He's got to make Q3 there, and I mean, again, obviously we'll talk about it a bit later on, but Red Bull are already slightly worried about how they're going to get on in Canada as well, which we love to hear it. As a Formula 1 fan, we love to hear the idea that the all-conquering dominant team is potentially looking to struggle more.
And there's still people out there saying it's one of the greatest cars of all time. Not a chance. It's terrible.
Exactly. Give us a title fight, I beg. But I mean, you mentioned Sergio Perez there, of course, out in Q1. There was another big name out in Q1 as well, wasn't there? Fernando Alonso, another disaster, and Sebastian Vettel wasn't even there this weekend.
Two weekends in a row, yeah. Alonso, he did get horrendously blocked on his second lap, didn't he? But the first lap, he just wasn't good enough. So,
the
2 weekends in a row.
That's the problem.
Yeah, Lance Stroll has beaten Alonso. It's now 4-4 overall. They're equal.
Which is mad,
so
isn't it?
Stroll is as good as Alonso. You heard it here first.
I mean, what actually, Jamie, tells us, is there any evidence to support the fact the Aston Martin might actually be the all-conquering dominant car, just both of them are a second slower than everyone else?
Great.
You just don't know.
Well, I think there is an element of that with Sauber, to be honest, that, if they had a top driver in there, maybe that's unfair on Bottas and Zhou, but I think that at least
Bottas was almost as close to a Red Bull as Zhou was to Bottas.
There's a solid 2-3 tenths in that car, but they just don't know what they're doing. But that's a story for another time. Yeah, and Logan Sargent obviously yet to make Q2 this season. Was still out.
He didn't make Q2.
He didn't. I know. That's what I mean. He's out in Q1 again.
Sorry.
Still waiting.
Well, my favourite stat, isn't it, is in the 29 Formula 1 actual qualifyings, excluding sprints he's done, he's not out-qualified Alex Albon at all, but he has out-qualified Sergio Perez 5 times, which is
incredible.
Simply sensational, isn't it? But I would be intrigued, because my guess would be Zhou is probably his closest head-to-head.
Who with?
Sargent. In terms of who Sargent's out-qualified the most in Formula 1. My guess would be Zhou. Because, am I right in saying still he's obviously yet to make Q2 in real qualifying sessions before
this
you break
season.
up the Shanghai Sprint? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he's qualified last 5 times.
That's painful.
It's not been the most fun for a fan of Zhou this season.
He just doesn't. I mean, obviously, again, like we said, obviously, Bottas hasn't been able to do a lot more most weekends. But, I mean, especially watching Zhou going around this weekend, he just at not a single point seemed not even confident, even comfortable in that car. It was just a disaster.
But he is ahead of Bottas in the championship, so have that.
By virtue of that P11, have that.
There you go.
Deary me. Q2 was slightly less dramatic, wasn't it? Ocon, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Stroll and Kevin Magnussen all out, which did mean we got to see Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly each with their first Q3 appearance of the year. And I mean, for me, this was basically just Williams might have a chance at points this weekend, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, the grid often determines, for the most part, the result without any craziness. So, yeah, totally was good news to get into Q3. Gasly was buzzing on the radio because he actually put it P5 in Q2, but sadly couldn't repeat that. But yeah, Albon and Gasly, good job. And obviously, both of them hadn't scored points up to this point in the season, and they were hoping to change that in the race.
Yes, exactly. And of course, obviously, we get then into the big daddy, don't we? The Q3 session. This is where, the drivers earn their worth. Or if you're Max Verstappen this weekend, rattle up against the Armco down at turn 1.
I still out-qualified Lewis Hamilton.
You did still out-qualify Lewis Hamilton, exactly, yeah. I mean, to be fair, Lewis had the old spec Mercedes wing, so he would have had the better of him.
Really?
But did you read this as well, actually, talking about wings? That because of how few parts Williams have got as a crash damage, Sargent was having to use the 2023 front wing.
I did see
weekend. That. Incredible by
Which
Williams.
is incredible that it's not, like, it's still legal. They didn't change the rules enough. Because imagine that in a rule change cycle, you just would have to run without a front wing, like Danny Kvyat in testing.
Well, my favourite story still was Mana when the new rules came in for 2017, wasn't it? And they were already basically bankrupt, and they tried to get special dispensation by the FIA that they could run their 2016 car with the new fat tyres. And it was basically going, a car that's 2.5 seconds off the pace in new regs that are meant to be about 4 seconds quicker. It ended up being about 5 or 6, wasn't it, around most circuits. Suddenly, we're discussing most weekends whether they're going to make the 107% rule.
I wonder what they did with that concept car, because they did have a chassis for 2017 car by the end.
It wasn't a proper chassis though, was it? I don't think.
No, it never made a track.
A different day.
Yeah.
No, exactly. But as we said, it was Leclerc seemingly actually, Jamie. I'm going to shout myself out here for a second because you laughed at me last week, but there was really only one driver that was challenging Charles Leclerc throughout qualifying, wasn't it? And who was that driver?
Big Oscar Piastri.
I told you he'd be quick here.
And you almost pulled it out the hat, to be fair to you, with the Piastri pole and win shouts, but second is the first of the losers, as we know. So you didn't.
No, I didn't. You're right. However, he did have the quickest combined splits of the weekend, so the pace was absolutely.
And what does that win him? Sorry.
Oh, it meant he bagged me a point in our predictions.
He did.
Is good. But yeah, in the end, it was Charles Leclerc. I think he wasn't. No, because Piastri did go fastest in Q2, didn't he? I think in the end. But it was Leclerc who stormed to pole by 10. He was one of the only drivers to actually improve on the second runs, wasn't he, in Q3? Because it was actually still very, very close between him and Oscar, and then just suddenly sharp dunks.
And then his last sector was absolutely ridiculous. He was pretty level going into sector 2, or going into sector 3, and then his last sector gained like a 10.5 or 2 tenths, which around Monaco is mad.
Brilliant.
A bit like what Max did last year against Alonso.
It pretty much was similar shades, wasn't it? But yeah, Oscar Piastri P2, Carlos Sainz P3 on the grid. Very good effort by him in the second Ferrari car. Because of course, obviously, had it been Lando there, you really would have think, that Ferrari going to be put under way too much pressure and would bottle it as we move into the Grand Prix. So it was Ferrari McLaren, Jamie. Here we go. Question time for you. It's the first time Ferrari and McLaren have locked out the front row for a Grand Prix since.
Sorry, Ferrari and McLaren on the front row together.
Sorry, front 2 rows even.
Front 2 rows.
Top 4 cars, sorry.
Oh, this will be a long time.
The 2 most dominant teams ever in Formula 1. Top 4 on the grid.
Oh, this is going to be like ridiculously long ago. Maybe like Valencia 09?
Belgium 2008.
Oof.
That was a great race as well.
That was a great race. I want to check the grid for Valencia 2009 now, see how far off I was. I know it was a McLaren one.
I mean, Kovalainen. Was Kovalainen in there, was he?
Yeah.
I know, because they had Bador in the car, so it was last for Ferrari.
Oh, yeah, of course. I actually think Raikkonen was third as well. No, he wasn't.
No, I was going to say he was definitely quicker than Bador, but he wasn't right at the front.
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nearly,
very long time.
The idea that that's been nearly 20 years is scary beyond belief.
Yeah, I have vague memories of the 2008 season. So
that race was probably one of, if not the best race of 2008. And
Nick Heidfeld going from 9th to 4th on the last.
I was going to say, unless you ask Sebastian Bourdais.
9th to 2nd actually, wasn't he? Because once Hamilton got his deserved penalty.
Oh, behave. we'll leave that for another day. We did actually say once, didn't we, that we were going to do F1 incident court, didn't we? Where we were going to look back at old incidents.
Ones that we disagree on.
Exactly. But that was kind of like the only one we could think of off the top of my head. That would be absolutely one if we started doing like old race shows and things like that. That would absolutely be something we have to do down
for sure,
the line.
Richard.
But yeah, I mean, yes, obviously Ferrari, McLaren. George Russell actually got the better of Max Verstappen. Oh, excuse
he hit the wall
me.
On his last lap in Q3.
Exactly, because Max stacked it. With Lewis 7th, Tsunoda, Albon, and Pierre Gasly rounding out the top 10 then. So, of course, you think, never in Formula 1 has more than the top 6 started and finished in the same order. So you think, towards the bottom of the top 10 then, there might be a little bit of intrigue.
There might be a bit of jeopardy. And then we got to the race. Before we got to the race, we heard the news that both Haas cars have been disqualified, which is funny. Because they were almost perfectly set to do the classic Kevin Magnussen blocking.
They were.
They were 12th and 14th, I think. So
I believe so, yeah.
You could have just, they stay out really long, both on hards. Everyone pits on mediums, goes behind Magnussen. Magnussen drives at 2 miles an hour. And then Hulkenberg finishes P1. That would have been amazing. But sadly, they were put back in P19 and 20. They also had the option of not being on the grid, but they chose to be on the grid. And I'm sure nothing bad happened on lap 1 for Haas because of that decision.
I thought they weren't allowed to start from the pit lane.
It said on the original tweets that they were going to start from the pits.
Well, that's normally the rule.
Yeah.
But I thought because it's Monaco, it was kind of like, hang on a minute, you're not having a get out of jail free card if there's carnage at the start. You're getting lumbered in there.
But not being in a crash because you would rather be last is not exactly a get out of jail free card.
Wait, no, because you would have been last anyway, because you would have started from the pit lane.
Yeah, but starting on the grid is only an advantage because you can make places. Or you can crash. But, that's on you. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they could have started from the pits if they wanted to, but they chose
Well, I feel like in hindsight they probably should have, looking at it.
Well,
but there we are.
There you go.
Talk me through the start, Jamie.
Well, the start of the race, you had, obviously, Charles Leclerc on pole from Oscar Piastri with Carlos Sainz next to him. Leclerc gets a very good launch and is immediately not under pressure into turn 1. Who is under pressure is Oscar Piastri, who has Carlos Sainz down his inside. And Piastri does very well to hang it around the outside, very bravely. And there's a small bit of contact between Sainz's front left and Piastri's kind of floor on the right-hand side of the car. And then going up the hill, immediately Sainz is going very slowly. And it's not just because he's driving at Monaco. It's actually because he has a front left puncture from this crash and immediately just goes off the track at Casino Square. The camera cuts back to Oscar Piastri right behind Charles Leclerc with a massive gap to Norris now. And Piastri is all over him into the Nouvelle chicane. Can he make a move? No, he can't. And then the red flag is shown on the timing tower. And we think, what on earth are the FIA doing? Have they seriously red flagged it because Carlos Sainz is down an escape road? The answer was no.
To be fair, he wasn't down an escape road, was he?
He wasn't, but he was out the way.
He was out the way pretty well. They could have absolutely just, they could have just safety carred that.
Yeah, definitely, but they couldn't have safety carred what has happened off screen, which was a massive crash between Sergio Perez and the two Haas cars of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg, and that wasn't the best showing by Perez and Magnussen mostly. Hulkenberg was definitely an innocent victim, but that's just his luck when he's on for a podium back in P20.
P20 at Monaco when he's on for a podium.
Definitely would have undercut a lot of them.
Okay. Talk me through that.
Do you want to talk through the crash? Because I just talked for 2 minutes.
It was one of those. Because of course, immediately you think, oh my. It's happening. Magnussen's getting a race ban. That's got to be 2 points for it. So basically, obviously, between turn 1 and turn 2, it actually isn't a straight line, as you would believe. Obviously, the circuit does kind of twist left and right slightly. Perez didn't get a particularly good run at turn 1. Basically, obviously, tried to pin Magnussen down to the wall. Any other driver in that situation would have backed out of it, because you can understand, the wall's going towards me. I'm going into a gap that's disappearing. I should probably back out of this, because I'm not far enough alongside the car in front. Magnussen absolutely has the mentality of, if you don't move out of the way, we are having a crash. And that's exactly what happened. So Perez obviously gets turned across his nose straight into the wall. It was actually a huge shunt, wasn't it? That Red Bull, they reckon they sustained close to $3 million worth of damage, so have fun with your budget cap. But yeah,
Magnussen. Don't bother with that anyway, they'll spend it on the caviar.
Exactly. Magnussen obviously completely out of it as well, and yeah, Hulkenberg unlucky to be collected. As he, I mean, how hard do you reckon his foot was down on that throttle when he saw that instant gun on the outside?
To try and just squeeze through on the left, and sadly the Red Bull slewing across the track caught him and turned him around, and that was it for both Haas cars out on lap 1. While some of their rivals were just chilling in the top 10, which was not ideal for the points in the championship. But one of their rivals, Alpine, were also having their own little nightmare at Portier, weren't they?
I mean, this is just hilarious, isn't it?
Very funny. And Esteban Ocon, once again, crashing into his teammates. And how often have we said that over the last 6 years, or 7 or 8 even years since he's been in Formula 1? Yeah. What is he doing? Like, they're battling for points. Obviously, Sainz at this point is out of the race. They're battling for P9 and 10. And Ocon on lap 1 in Monaco at Portier for a team that scored 1 point all season absolutely sends it up the inside of his own teammate. It's like, what on earth is he thinking? And obviously they crashed. Ocon was raised into the air. Gasly had damage. Ocon is out on the spot. Gasly probably would have been out on the spot had it not been red flagged, and he could fix a few things. He definitely would have been out of the running for points. And yeah, the team has not gone down well back in France, wherever they're, well, I guess it's Enstone, isn't it? But the French run that team were not particularly happy with Esteban Ocon, which is good because he's kind of the golden child, it feels like, and I'm glad that he's actually getting treated how he should be.
I mean, yeah, I'm impressed you segued so quickly away from the Magnussen crash, because I was going to ask you whose fault you thought it was and things like that, but we'll go back to it in just a second.
Okay.
Like we said, I mean, Esteban Ocon, you're in a team that scored 1 point this year, and of course we all get it that track position over your teammate, lap 1 at Monaco, is everything. Like, if you're in that kind of battle, in that kind of team at the moment, you want to be ahead of your teammate on lap 1 if possible. But how aggressive that... I mean, he went from a car's length back, didn't he? Down into Portier, because Gasly was slightly offline because he just lost the place. Oh, sorry, he was trying to go around the outside of Albon, wasn't he? Through lower Mirabeau. Obviously couldn't. Ocon just absolutely sent it in there, didn't he? It was terrible. It was... I've seen Ocon fans saying, "Oh, well, his front wheels were ahead on the apex." You're going... He's
out of control.
Exactly. He's not under much control of that car. I mean, it's one of those things, because of course now obviously they're talking about, every time Ocon has collided with his teammates on circuit, and of course obviously the big ones are Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso, isn't it? Obviously he's come together with Gasly before, but that one was really a racing incident. They were both unlucky. But we've spoke about it in the past, haven't we? Not a single one of Esteban Ocon's previous teammates ever, it feels like, has had much nice things to say about him. Alonso was probably the most vocal about this.
Yeah, he was definitely most vocal. But even Gasly doesn't like him particularly. Doesn't like.
Well, they haven't liked each other. For
not even because of their childhood, but even as teammates, they just don't get on. It feels like in Miami when Ocon lucked into the point, that really annoyed Gasly. In Imola, Ocon went past him before doing quali lap, I think, or something like that. It's basically disrespectful again, and it feels like Ocon just doesn't really have much value for any of his teammates.
Well, it's bizarre, isn't it? Because it very much does feel like, of course, obviously, the old sentiment is true. The first person you've always got to try and beat is your teammate. But Esteban Ocon seems to take that to a cult religious level of belief, isn't it? It's like the only way I can think to describe. It's so just... It almost completely takes... It's almost like Red Mist Descends, isn't it? It completely takes over everything. Yeah. And, whether that comes from a childhood of being mates with Pierre Gasly, who had the money and did obviously get all the treatment and that kind of thing, or, whether that comes for, tougher times trying to get into Formula 1, getting dropped, that kind of thing as well. But when you kind of look at the evidence, it's just, of course, Alonso's had beef with teammates in the past. Obviously, most notably Lewis, because of course he wouldn't play second fiddle to him.
Rightly so.
But it's other ones, isn't it? You think we've never seen that side of Sergio Perez before or since then, really, have we? Like, something happened within that team. There were always kind of rumblings, wasn't it, that on the short period he was Pascal Wehrlein's teammate as well. Yeah. They did not get on.
Yeah, and that was pinned on Wehrlein a little bit, but I don't know why now, looking back.
I think they were both difficult. You know, I think they were both difficult, and obviously I think they were both... they were both under, like, 21, weren't they, when they were at Manor together?
Wehrlein was 20... Yeah, he was 21, 22, yeah.
And Ocon was 19.
Yeah.
I think people often also forget how young Esteban Ocon was when he got into Formula 1 in the first place.
Teenager.
Which is kind of mad. But, I mean, yeah, with Ocon...
There's a common denominator.
Exactly. I mean, I'm happy that, obviously, you know, Bruno Famin obviously came out with an absolutely scathing report during the Grand Prix. And, of course, you know, there's probably an element of... You know, we got a podium here last year. There's a big opportunity this weekend. We've completely wasted the first third of this season. We are nowhere. He's probably under huge pressure from the Renault board because, of course, not only are they not delivering, but they're also not delivering for Renault either, which I still think is odd. But there must be so much internal politics going on inside that team at the moment. All the rumour and speculation that Ocon could be dropped for Canada, I don't believe.
It would be funny.
I really
hope
it would be
it
hilarious.
happens.
But I really do wonder whether there's an element of now. Because I'm trying to think, apart from Haas, what team's really going to be interested in his services? Mercedes wouldn't be, I don't think, because they've obviously completely cut ties with him.
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari obviously can. Red Bull I don't think would be interested. McLaren obviously aren't interested. Williams don't seem to be interested. Steak, Kick Sauber, obviously they're not interested. You're basically looking, obviously, AlphaTauri or VCAR, whatever they're called, wouldn't care for him.
Yeah.
You're basically looking at staying at the team you're at, or maybe going for an odd move to Haas, which seems like a step kind of backwards.
He's just kind of isn't helping himself when it's quite on the record that he's looking for a way out of Alpine. But, like, why would anyone take him? Because it's all well and good taking the difficult teammates. Like, you'd argue Max Verstappen in his time has been a difficult teammate to some people, as has Lewis Hamilton, as has Fernando Alonso. But these drivers, they're almost valid in being annoying teammates because they're class. They're really, really quick.
That's why they're annoying.
Whereas when you've got Ocon, even versus Gasly, they're not that different in their ability, but Gasly will play the team game sometimes and actually put the team first. Whereas it doesn't seem like Ocon will. So why would you pick him when these drivers... Obviously, there's not hundreds of them, but, you know, you've got at least 10 drivers who are about as good as Ocon, and the other 9 are all going to put the team ahead of the driver. So,
I mean, it's something I've said is kind of a bit of a half joke, but also half true. But if you're, you know, Formula 1 is probably the most expensive sport to go professional in, isn't it? It costs a ridiculous amounts of money. If you've somehow been able to make it after living in a caravan for how much you've sacrificed, and still people don't like you, you've clearly done something wrong with your image. And I say that as a joke a lot of the time, but there is definitely an element of it rings true.
Yeah.
Every kind... Because I guess, obviously, that no driver is going to really talk about it, you know, unless they write a book 15 years from now. But it really does, you know, you wonder what Esteban Ocon not only is like behind the scenes as well. Because, to be fair, this year, you've got to also say he has done the better job than Pierre Gasly most weekends.
Only
he has been able to get... Only a little bit, but he has reliably had that extra tenth or two over Gasly this year. And it almost seems like the one time Gasly's had the better of him, he's kind of gone, well, that's not right. I'm not letting this happen. And then, obviously, immediately has taken himself out of the Grand Prix. It's just odd, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a strange character. Definitely. And yeah, that was the end of his race. And it could be the end of his F1 career if we're going to dramatise it. Could it be that Jack Doohan
I'm getting you clickbaited on that now.
Great.
Career over
could it be
on the thumbnail.
Jack Doohan into Renault or into Alpine for the rest of the season?
No, it won't be.
I don't think it will be. But I would love to see Doohan get a shot.
I love all the people going, oh my god, Mick Schumacher could come back. Please don't make that happen.
No.
Please. Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Let's cycle back then slightly because Jamie was so desperate to segue to French slander. Perez Magnussen, who are we saying is to blame there? Because I'll be honest, obviously kind of the evidence from a lot of people was, Perez saw he was there, he should have given him more room. I'm not convinced he should have.
Yeah,
in the current rules.
And also, it's Monaco on lap 1. You're not exactly going to lift off to give someone space, are you? Like, it's almost...
Well, sometimes you're going to have to.
It's on the car behind to not crash.
In that instant, yeah.
Yeah. I can see why they didn't penalise it, because the FIA bottle jobs when it comes to penalty points.
They won't give him a race ban.
It was more on Magnussen for me. And Hulk said it on the radio, didn't he? Like, that was unnecessary, totally. Like,
yeah.
You know, when the Haas start last, almost the only car you're not fighting is a Red Bull. So, yeah.
I think, had Magnussen been on any less than 10 penalty points, that would have been 2 penalty points on his licence. But because he's on 10 penalty points, it was no penalty points on his licence.
It's also lap 1, so they're often more lenient.
That's also true. That is also true. But of course, obviously all of that carnage and debris everywhere did bring out the red flag, which basically meant the race was ruined, wasn't it, to be honest?
Yes.
Because, the fact they gave Sainz back his position, I'm not sure
Ridiculous.
how I feel about that.
Ridiculous. I don't get it at all. I want to know when the rule changed, because Bahrain 2020, when Grosjean obviously had his massive fireball crash, they obviously didn't all complete Sector 1 that day. But they still took the timings from the safety car line before.
I thought the red flag came out down at the hairpin.
No, it was definitely earlier than that. As soon as the fireball went, they threw the red flag. Cars were going through turn 4. But they took the timings from the safety car line just at the end of the pit exit. So it wasn't perfect, but it was Bottas had lost 2 places or something like that. I can't remember. And obviously, they all had done Sector 1 this time, apart from the cars that had crashed, and Joe, who had just did a massive crash and was trying to avoid all the debris. So, why couldn't they at least, either use Sector 1 or just use the safety car line at the pit exit? It was strange.
Yeah. It's... I guess the thing is, what probably was a bit more frustrating about that one was it was completely Sainz's fault. He had shot himself in the foot.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what annoys people more than anything else. But, of course, it meant, basically, everyone got a free pit stop, so everyone who could go onto the hard tyres did. It did leave a little bit of intrigue, didn't it, between Max and the Mercs, because, obviously, they'd started the race on hards.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we're going to have to then try and nurse a set of mediums for the rest of the afternoon. But pretty much that was basically all that then happened, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was a quintessential Monaco Grand Prix.
Even worse than most Monaco Grand Prix, because at least the pit stop period can be interesting.
We've been kind of spoiled, haven't we? Over the last 2 Monaco Grand Prix have actually been interesting because it's been changeable conditions.
Even without the changeable, though, you think like 2017 had interesting pit stops.
Yeah.
2019 had obviously Max crashed into Bottas in the pit lane. That was quite interesting. Yeah, it was a shame to not have that. And I wonder if we do the F2 rule and be like, pitting under a red flag or changing your tyres under a red flag doesn't count as a mandatory stop.
Or that you can't pit inside the first 6 laps. Because let's be fair, the F2 race was hilarious shithousery by Zach O'Sullivan.
Yes.
Incredible. For those of you who didn't watch it, 42 lap F2 feature race. He stayed and did 40 laps on a set of mediums, basically waiting for a safety car at the end. Pitted 4 seconds before a virtual safety car came out because someone else stacked it.
You can't pit under VSC because they closed the pit lane. But because he was in before it came out, he got the benefit of a VSC without the pit lane being closed, and they won the race. And Isaac Hadjar cried about it, and it was lovely.
He did. So. It wasn't great. It was not a good weekend for the French because Victor Martin. What's happened to Victor Martins this year?
That's a topic for another day. But he's really not doing very well. It gave us some interesting radio messages. This race, Leclerc getting aired by Brian Bozzi was funny. Is that his name?
I think so. That's his name. Bozzi, something.
Probably Bozzi actually, isn't he? He's Italian.
I don't know.
Yeah, Leclerc being like, I have this much margin, or do you want me to say? And he's like, no, we don't. We didn't ask, basically.
Yeah, shut up, do your job.
And then also Max on the radio driving behind driving behind Russell, going about 5 seconds off the pace. Being I should have bought my pillow. That was one of my favourites. And it becoming very useful the next time Max is dominating a race.
Exactly. I guess the only other really funny bit, of course, was the fact that Aston Martin threw Alonso's race away and then Stroll stacked it anyway, which was incredible. And that should serve Aston Martin as yet another reminder why you don't sacrifice your 2-time Formula 1 World Champions race for your Canadian paid driver.
Yes,
was
and it wasn't even
fantastic.
the funniest part was they did all this to get P11 for Stroll, and he couldn't even bring P11 home.
No, he didn't even manage P11 at the end, which was just fantastic. Bottas did make, I believe, the only on-track overtake of the day.
No, there were a couple more.
Was there a couple more?
Yeah,
sorry, no. The stat I read was there was more cuts to drivers' girlfriends than there were overtakes.
Yes, yeah, that's
7
definitely
against
true.
5. And I'm pretty certain we only saw Charles and Carlos's girlfriends.
Yeah, I mean, who else does that to show, really?
Yeah, I suppose. Formula 1's become
Has Piastri got a girlfriend?
Single. Yeah. Have you never seen Piastri's girlfriend? She looks like a porcelain doll. It's bizarre.
What? Okay, well...
My girlfriend was showing me her. It's like the weirdest thing in the world.
Fair enough. There you go.
But,
yeah, this is not Vitaly Petrov's girlfriend.
Dating female Eric Boulier.
Looks like Eric Boulier.
I still think about that from time to time. It's so funny.
And that was really it. The top 10 did not change from the
Your
beginning.
voice octave did.
My voice octave did. That was a shame. Radio check. And yes,
that was funny. The first time ever. The record prior to today was top 6 finishing where they started.
The same order.
This weekend it was the top 10, which is absolutely insane stat. And it begs the question, doesn't it, Jamie? Do we need to get rid of the Monaco Grand Prix?
Nah, no, we don't.
What do we actually need to do, Jamie? Because you're a man of culture and you know wheel.
Joker laps.
No.
What's the other one? Do something special?
No.
Oh, no.
I thought you know wheel. Change the cars.
Oh, of course, yes. How could I forget? Make the cars smaller, and you might get some overtakes.
Exactly. The fact we said this about drivers were saying this about Imola last week. How many tracks do we believe need to be dropped off the calendar before we accept actually maybe the tracks aren't the real issue here? It's actually the cars.
Well,
they do just desperately need to shrink.
Keep making massive tracks in the Middle East, and then we'll be alright, won't we?
Well, apparently, yeah. Formula 2, they proved you can still have a decent race around Monaco. It wasn't,
Monaco's was very good.
Monaco's never going to be the greatest race on the calendar, but it can absolutely deliver some action, like Formula 2 did. Actually, what it also proved to us is that tyre blankets need to be banned.
Yeah, well, they are going to be next year.
They are.
I will die on the hill that mandatory pit stops in red flags, or if you can't make a mandatory stop in a red flag, because then everyone would have still had the variation in strategy, and a lap 1 red flag doesn't ruin a race like this. So
no, I'm with you on that one. I think that actually would have made things very interesting.
It would have taken Gasly's win away from him in 2020, so I'm glad that's happened. But now we can change the rule.
Now you can change the rules, exactly. Before Ocon gets a look in.
Actually, it wouldn't have changed the win because he didn't pit under red flag, did he? That was Stroll. Yeah.
He pit before the red flag.
He did, so his pit stop would have been fine. Yeah, obviously the result is the same as the grid, which we went to already, so there's no reason for that. It was Leclerc win, Piastri second, Sainz third.
A cut above the rest. Can we take a moment to discuss how much better Alex Jakes is than Crofty at commentary?
I'm not a massive Crofty hater, but the final lap commentary from Alex Jakes was top, and Crofty's was not at all. Yes, and Carlos Sainz, who did half a lap on a punctured set of mediums, and the other 77 laps on the same set of hards, is very interesting. And then you had the rest of the grid, as we know. Norris, Russell, Verstappen, P6. Title fight on the cards? Definitely not.
Oh, baby. I want to believe. I think Charles Leclerc hasn't finished outside the top 4 this year. Max has twice.
Well, that means
Charles Leclerc is the more consistent driver.
Leclerc's due a terrible DNF.
Absolutely. Canada, they'll end up 8th. They'll bring upgrades to that Ferrari, and it'll end up going backwards. We know it. But imagine if we ended up in a world where Max, Charles, and Lando had a title fight this year.
It won't be this year. I hate to break it to you.
I reckon, I want to believe. I think Max will probably still win it, but I think Ferrari and McLaren are going to be there more often than not now.
Max will win it before the last race of the season.
It wouldn't surprise me if we end up with an eggy, he takes it in Qatar kind of thing.
He'll take it with 2 or 3 races left.
Probably.
Yes.
I love
cold
even
water
now.
on the hype.
Exactly. No, Jamie, we've got to keep the hype up. It's going to be an 8-way title
I'm
fight
just a
going
Max
into
fan.
Abu
I can't
Dhabi.
be bothered with a title fight.
Yeah, you're so bad. So bad.
Yes. But speaking of, I'm going to do your quiz.
Oh,
because there's going to be no time limit, because it might go long or it might not.
It probably won't, knowing me.
It probably won't. Max Verstappen finished P6 for the first time since Brazil 2022 in a GP.
Yes.
The first time he finished P6, and as a clue, remember that, was Bahrain 2016. You're just going to have to name the finishing order, front to back, of that race.
Oh, no. That is awful.
See how far you get.
Awful. Rosberg won it.
He did. It might. Yeah, I won't say anything.
This might be over instantly. Because obviously Lewis didn't start and then got completely careened into by Bottas. No, that 2017 was when Raikkonen broke a man's leg. No, 2018 was when Raikkonen broke a man's leg. This is awful, Jamie. This might be one of the worst quizzes. How am I meant to remember a random race from 2016? Sebastian Vettel P2?
And that's the end of the quiz.
Oh, damn it.
Kimi Raikkonen was P2. Vettel had an engine failure.
Oh, before the race even
started.
Yeah.
It is quite a memorable race. I reckon if you got past Raikkonen, you were alright for a bit, I think.
Lewis P3.
Yep.
Ricardo 4th?
Yep.
Massa 5th?
No. Roman Grosjean in the Haas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but when Haas were decent.
Yeah, for 2 races, and then they just dipped. Verstappen,
That's what they do every year.
And then you would have struggled after Verstappen. It was then Kvyat in the Red Bull. Max was in the Toro Rosso at this point.
He was, yeah.
And Massa, Bottas, and Van Dorn with his debut race in the points.
Oh, yeah, Stoffel Van Dorn, a point from McLaren. Yeah, their first point it was like their first point in like the first 6 races, wasn't it? And it came not by either of their world champions, but by Stoffel Van Dorn.
By the rookie on his debut.
Exactly. Madness.
There you go.
Absolute madness.
I hope you enjoyed that quiz.
I did not. Race rating. Obviously, we've been pretty down the middle of the road this year. I don't think that's
pretty generous. Based on a lot of fans' views on the races so far this year. My lowest has been a 5.5 in Bahrain. This was so much worse than that.
It was.
I will go for...
I feel like our ratings have become better as the season's gone on. Like, would I say Imola was any better than Bahrain? Probably not.
It was. He had Norris right on Max. That was a bit intense.
Yeah.
Max won by 27 seconds at Bahrain. I might give it a 1. I'm like, what race could be worse than this?
There's not a lot that could be worse than that, is there?
I guess you think in not Bahrain, like Belgium 22.
Yeah.
Or Imola 23. But those races didn't happen. For a race that happened, it's got to be a 1.
I mean, giving Imola a 23 a race rating seems a bit disgusting.
Australia 2020.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a 1. There it is.
I mean, I was going to say a 2, but I'm going to join you on a 1.
Like,
Monaco,
I can't...
it's
if I was to give it a 2, I'm like, something could have been worse.
Something could be worse. I mean, I guess every driver could finish where they started.
I mean, yeah.
Esteban Ocon could win. That would be a 1.
Every relevant driver finished, like everyone who got points finished where they started. It was insane.
They did.
Which
meant Albon scored points for Williams, so I'm happy with that.
And Gasly did too. My boy.
Did. Not for Williams, he didn't.
Not for Williams. That's next year.
No, it's going to be Sainz to Williams, isn't it? We can talk about that more.
Apparently.
In an upcoming show.
Who was driver of the day, and why was it not Charles Leclerc?
Why wouldn't it have been Charles Leclerc?
Well, it was Charles Leclerc, really, wasn't it?
It was Charles Leclerc, yeah, exactly. Is that his first? Yeah, that's his first driver of the day of the year.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at that.
And predictions.
You
almost smashed it.
I almost absolutely nailed this. I was going to go for a double beautiful week.
Matt went for Oscar Piastri on pole, which was missing by about 2/10. Oscar Piastri win.
1 point.
Which, if he got pole, obviously, he would have got the win. Charles Leclerc, P2, another point.
1 point.
And Lando Norris, P3, and he actually finished.
Should have been a point.
Should have been.
Thank you, Carlos.
It should have been 2 points, actually.
It should have been 2, but yeah, I could have had it, because had Sainz had to start from the back, Ferrari would have absolutely fumbled that, and Oscar Piastri would have been a Monaco Grand Prix winner. I would have got 6 out of 8 points there, which I would have been happy with. But I didn't.
I tried to be normal and clever and just think, Verstappen's going to win, why wouldn't he? And he didn't. So I went Max for pole, Max win. Norris P2, no points so far. And here we go. Carlos Sainz P3,
in
+2.
True
Thank you very much.
Jamie183 fashion. An absolutely bogus P3 prediction that should never have happened means that we score identical points.
We
from
tied
this
on
weekend.
2 points each. Thank you very much.
I hate this game. I absolutely hate it.
Me on 37, you're on 32. Keep up if you can.
I will. I'm going to win again. I mean, we're 1 for 1 so far, aren't we, on these, I believe?
We are.
So I'm going to win this year again. Have we got anything else to add, though, Jamie? Of course, we'll be back next week, won't we, to discuss everything that's gone on since then and talking about Jack Doohan making his debut.
I think that's everything. And we need to wrap it up because I need to go to work.
We've stretched it out. We've done very, very well. Thank you all so much, as always, for listening. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure to leave a like. Get yourself subscribed. And yeah, Jamie and I will be back next week, even. We actually get a bit of a break to preview the Canadian Grand Prix.